So I want to go to you, Sheriff Birkhead. Share with us, when you hear that expression, defund the police, what are you hearing out of that?
Well, no, Deborah, thank you, and thank you for having me on the show. When I hear individuals or protesters proclaim defund the police, I really don't think they understand what they're saying. I really don't think there's a true meaning of what defund the police means. It makes for a very good rallying cry, but when you think about defunding or abolishing the police, we have no other system in place to maintain peace and order. And so I think one of the things I advocate for in Durham is that we build communities or less dependent on law enforcement, but can never go without law enforcement. And that's a whole conversation about empowering communities to self-police and partner with police. But defunding the police to me is a shallow rallying cry. It gets people really charged up. But when we sit down to have real conversations, I think what they're really wanting us to do is reform the criminal justice system. And I do believe that true criminal justice reform is necessary in this day and time.
We're going to talk some more about defunding the police, but first I want to stick with you. Sheriff Birkhead, can you share with us what are some of the top concerns of law enforcement from your perspective when it comes to reforms that people are crying for?
No, that's a great question, and we've had a number of conversations this year, obviously, with everything going on with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the banning the chokehold and use of force. And I think that's where the conversation should begin. When we talk about criminal justice reform, there needs to be some consistency across the board in training and recruitment and how we hold law enforcement officers who do wrong, who break the law, how we hold them accountable. And I think we've got to get past this idea that law enforcement is protected by whether it's qualified immunity or the thin blue line. I think we must move past that and really hold those bad officers who do bad things accountable. And to me, in my 36 years of law enforcement, that's where we've missed the mark. And not that we've tried to hide it or cover it up, but in some cases we have. But we've got to have a true conversation about accountability when it comes to police wrongdoing.
And when it comes to what you and other law enforcement officers are really concerned about, when you see these protests, when you hear about the cry, what is it that your needs are as a police force?
First and foremost, I want to make sure that the voices are being heard, as you mentioned a moment ago. We want to make sure that we have an environment where those protesters can air their grievances or their concerns. But from a law enforcement perspective, we always want to build community trust. And right now, there is no trust within the community as it relates to police law enforcement relations. So I'm constantly trying to build those bridges where we can have meaningful conversations with those communities that are being impacted by gun violence, by drug crimes, and we strive to maintain that quality of life. And that takes resources, that takes sitting down, having true conversations about reform, it takes sitting down and talking with our prosecutors and making sure that when we affect an arrest that there's consequences on the back end. So when we talk about criminal justice reform, from where I'm coming, it's an all-inclusive conversation from law enforcement all the way through to the judiciary.